Hey, what's up everybody, Unrested here, and I want to just start this video off with a big thank you to everybody who's joined my new Horror Kingdom channel. Man, inspiring. It's such a breath of fresh air to work on that channel and to make videos about Japanese urban legends, creepypastas, scary stories, and yokai for you and see your response on those. I'm just feeling like super motivated to make videos on that channel. But I don't want to neglect this channel, and today we're going to go ahead and read a little news article that says Japan schools, hateful places for LGBT students. Tokyo. Japanese schools are filled with hateful comments about gay and transgender people, including remarks by teachers that can aggravate bullying and push some students into depression. Human Rights Watch said in a report Friday. The study was based on interviews with dozens of LGBT students at schools across the country and also teachers who the rights group said were often a key part of the problem. Hateful LGBT rhetoric is nearly ubiquitous, with the Japanese schools driving LGBT students into silence, self-loathing, and in some cases self-harm, the group said. Nearly every interviewee said that they heard anti-LGBT rhetoric in school, including LGBT people called disgusting, the use of a slur words such as homo, and declarations that quote-unquote, these creatures should never have been born. While HRW noted that such discrimination is not just an issue in Japan, the country does lag behind the United States and many other Western nations in terms of gay rights and same-sex marriage. Historically, Japan has been broadly tolerant of homosexuality, with documented cases of samurai warriors during feudal times having male lovers, while same-sex relationships have been depicted in traditional art such as ukiyo-e. I guess that's woodblock printing. As Japan industrialized and modernized, however, the late 19th century Western prejudices against homosexuality increased, adopted, and were rapidly spread. Sachi N, no last name given, of course, a 20-year-old lesbian interviewed by the HRW, reported that she learned in class that homosexual relationships were the main causes of AIDS and were a very weird thing to do. Everything I heard and was taught about LGBT people was bad, she was quoted as saying. Even though now I am a lesbian and I know it, I have a bad concept of it. I still think it's my fault. HRW researcher Kyle Knight said working with teachers and making LGBT issues part of the curriculum was a crucial problem that needed to be fixed. The most important thing to combat this, ellipses, is to arm the teachers with appropriate information to have LGBT topics included in the curriculum, he told reporters Friday. Bullying is widespread and sometimes brutal in Japanese schools, but government policies aimed at fixing the problem do not specifically address LGBT students, who are among the most vulnerable, the rights group said. There are signs of growing public acceptance, however. Tokyo's bustling Shibuya Entertainment District has started issuing symbolic quote-unquote partnership certificates to same-sex couples in what was a landmark advance for Japan's gay rights movement. Some other municipal governments have also followed suit, while corporate Japan is also showing signs of moving towards recognizing same-sex couples. Well, guys, I would say some of the things that you do see happen in Japan as far as social movements are about 50 years behind where America is, but at the same time, there's many aspects of Japan where homosexuality in the LGBT community is accepted. For example, many times there are homosexual, LGBT, cross-dressing and transgender people on TV, variety shows. Where I do see some people complain is that a lot of the times when they have these different personalities on there, they choose the most flamboyant and kind of loud and obnoxious versions of these, which obviously does not cover the very wide range of personalities and types in the LGBT community. And I have seen some of my friends who are part of that community complain about that, and I can understand their disdain for such, I guess, actors, actresses, talent, idols, etc. Now, I do see in this generation, as far as like my same age, the baby boomer generation, they were very, very indifferent to the whole situation. They weren't any bit against people being gay or lesbian or transgender. They pretty much just had kind of a hands-off situation on. They're just kind of like, yeah, who cares? If it doesn't bother me, who cares? And I think that's what you're going to find most of the time in Japan. Now, of course, there are still a lot of very old school people in Japan. If you don't already know it, Japan's gray generation is massive. People who are between the age of like 65 and 70 is still a massive part of Japan. More adult diapers sold in Japan last year than baby diapers. And that generation is still very backwards thinking as far as LGBT is concerned. I remember having one of my bosses at an old job who was gay. He lived with a exchange family, and when he asked one of the people he was living with if there was an LGBT community, the woman he was living with said, no, no, there's definitely no gay people in Japan at all, because I never ever saw any gay people holding hands at the grocery store, which I don't know if that's where gay people go to hold hands in Japan. I'm not really sure how that comment really shows her knowledge of how much of an LGBT community there is in Japan. So I'm thinking there's probably a huge lack of education as far as it's concerned. At the same time, when and where such a part of the education should be added to the curriculum that is the public schooling in Japan, I think is still up for a hot topic. I don't think it's something that you should be starting as early as elementary school level, but maybe in primary schools, junior high schools, high school level, it can be, I suppose, entered in there as a certain aspect of it. I feel, though, it should be coming about in Japan in a more natural and gradual sense. I understand people here are still very conservative, and that those ideas of same-sex marriage will gradually start to appear more and more in Japan. One thing that I did notice, though, that this article didn't mention, which I think Japan does well, is that they will acknowledge a marriage between same-sex couples if it is already legal in another country. So, for example, in America now, it is legal to have a same-sex marriage, and Japan will recognize that. And this article didn't mention that. Yes, in Shibuya, they're offering that certificate that is what did they call it exactly? Hold on, let me see if I can find that again. It was something like a relationship certificate. Whatever exactly it was called. It's just a certificate. It's kind of like a worthless piece of paper. It grants people nothing. It doesn't have their marriage be recognized by any other ward or district or prefecture in Japan. So it's still pretty useless at this point. Mentioning that as kind of a gradual moving forward point is kind of a moot point when it's not noticed by any other part of Japan. It's literally a piece of paper that just says, hey, these two people call themselves married. So there's a lot more that Japan can move forward with that. I think they should recognize same-sex marriages, not only just for the fact of giving those people the respect they deserve, but for the fact of benefits and receiving, things like insurance, leave time, paid overtime, things like that. Those are not given to people who are in a same-sex relationship, and it's something that Japan slowly needs to move forward with. If not for the fact that they agree with LGBT community, but for the very fact of humanity in general. I know a lot of people, this is a very controversial subject. I myself am a big supporter of the LGBT community. I have many friends in Japan, part of it, and I will continue to do anything I can to help it move forward. As far as bringing up articles like this, I think can do just a little bit if I can make people more aware. What are you guys' thoughts on how Japan could move forward? Slowly, gradually, faster? I don't know. What do you think? Should they be pushing it quicker in the schools? What should it be as far as the ward, prefectures, and districts? What should be recognized? How could we better offer certificates that show not only LGBT relationships being valid, but also sharing the different benefits that you would get from a job then as well? What is being ignored? Bullying is kind of a problem all around the board in Japan. There was recently, in the past 2 years, a very bad case of a boy jumping from the second floor of his high school because he was bullied every day to the point that his antagonizers were making him literally practice suicide by jumping from the first floor, until finally he did it by himself from the second floor and actually, followed through with it. After that, Japan's government kind of cracked down a little bit harder, in the sense that they sent those two kids out of that school, which is a big deal in Japan. It makes it very difficult to go to a school if you can't go to the one in your district. But was that even really enough? This boy in this occasion had nothing to do with LGBT, but I'm just bringing it up to show you how bullying is a problem in Japan. Those kids were not really disciplined in any certain way other than saying, hey, now you need to go to another school. The principal of that school actually tried to keep everything hush-hush and personally asked the parents of the child who committed suicide not to talk about it to the newspaper, and offered no benefits or no compensation for doing such. Just kind of like, hey, this is going to look bad for our school. Could you please not talk about this? I mean, you know, for the sake of our school. So I still feel like bullying in general is not handled very well in Japan. Is it really handled well in any country, though? I mean, I feel like even in my own country, in America, bullying was never really handled that well. People would always be like, you need to tell a teacher. Well, guess what? I never did because teacher wouldn't have done shit about it. How do you guys feel about that as far as the bullying subject is concerned? How can bullying be, I guess, disciplined, stopped? I guess it can't be totally brought to a stop, but at the very least, how can it be gradually something that's done away with in Japan or any school for that matter in any country? I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on both of these subjects. Until next time, I am unrested with the questions you requested. This is JFAQ, Japan's Frequently Asked Questions. Have a good one.